Hello and welcome to this live and on-demand webinar hosted by B2B Marketing and Sherpa. I'm Baldwin, the Head of Content for B2B Marketing, and today's topic for discussion is how to transform your channel marketing. To discuss this, we've got the CEO of Sherpa, who is also a specialist in channel marketing strategy and execution. That's Tom Perry. Tom is a B2B marketing professional with 15 years experience working with some of the world's largest and fastest growing tech companies, specializing in all things channel. As part of his presentation, Tom is going to unveil Sherpa's channel transformation framework and also its channel assessment tool. So both of those are being released today. You're very lucky to get your hands on them. They will help you assess the maturity of your channel and how to improve in a number of key areas. He's going to talk through those during the webinar today, more broadly about the topic, and also give you tailored advice during our live Q&A audience. So if you do have any questions, guys, you can pose those at any time. Just look for the button beneath the slide. We'll pick through those questions at the end of the webinar presentation, and if we don't manage to get back to you within the hour, we will follow up with you personally afterwards. There will also be a live poll, so do get involved in that as well. Just click the vote button, which you'll see again beneath the slide. So now I'd like to welcome Tom Perry, CEO of Sherpa. Tom, welcome. Thanks for joining.
Marianne, thank you very much. It's great to be here. Good afternoon, everybody. We've got, as Marianne said, we've got a few things that I want to give you a little bit of context and background to how we developed the framework and our tool. And actually, we're going to be speaking to somebody who has been through the process of completing the survey, and we will be speaking to Ashleigh later in the webinar. So we'll get cracking, and please fire any questions, as Marianne said, using the Bright Talk panel on your right. Just some context around Sherpa. Sherpa is 8 years old. I founded the business having worked in resellers and vendors for a number of years. And in that 8 years, we've become a channel marketing specialist agency, and we made a big deal about recruiting people from disties, vendors and resellers to give ourselves a really nice cross-section of skills in the business. We've had some success recently around B2B Marketing Awards, and we really have found our niche in managing channel strategy and the implementation that goes around that and the execution. So that's a little bit about us, just to get us kicked off. I wanted just to also give an indication of the pillars that we see, or those key buckets of activity needed for developing and changing up channel. And as we go through and get to our framework and our tool, you'll see some of this reappear. But key pillars of what we deliver to vendors and channels alike are in these kind of 5 buckets. Planning and the analysis that goes with transforming channel, whether you have the right partners and whether you need to refresh in the recruit bucket, then engaging and enabling partners, getting them up to speed if they are new, or reinvigorating them if they've been around a while. Growing partners with channel demand generation, account-based marketing sits in here with channel partners, and then the whole measurement and analysis piece of that. And so they're kind of our routes to market, and just gives you a little bit of background about us as a company. So I want to move on to just a little bit of scene setting around the framework and the tool, because I think it will give you an idea of how we put this together. And the first point is that over the last couple of years, we have been talking to a kind of around 40 plus vendors to understand their frustrations, their challenges, their successes around channel and channel development. And we wanted to develop a model, and it was clear that going through that process that we had a number of things we wanted to bring to market. And the first of these was really around developing a channel-based, account-based marketing program. We kind of had the idea in 2017, pitched it into a couple of customers in 2018. And actually, it drove a really large amount of feedback from our vendor community. And there was a kind of message that kept resonating, which was the need to transform their channel. And there's multiple different types of channels coming into existence. And this was the feedback we were getting. At the same time, we were very much aligning with the Serious Decisions channel marketing framework. But we kept hearing that the activation of that model was a challenge. And as such, we wanted to go away and come up with something that allowed us to take all the kind of great analysis that you get from people like Sirius and Forrester and deliver something to the marketplace. And it's taken a while. We were certainly at the Sirius event last autumn where we started having this thought. And so this is kind of the culmination of some of that work. But a couple of other points. We kept coming across similar challenges, always centered around growth, but very, very different priorities and initiatives within those vendors, and all different stages of, let's say, maturity of their channels. We've talked some very big global players with some up and comings, some recently funded. There was a whole cross section that allowed us to kind of start threading these similar challenges that we were observing. And then, the question that we keep getting asked as well is, if I want to transform my channel and go down, the route of redefining my channel strategy, where do I start? And this is what drove out us building the tool. But the common theme here amongst all of the pre-work and the research that we've done has been the need for channel growth. A couple of elements to that. The planning cycle asking more of the channel, and rates of growth ticking up gradually. We have to deliver more from the channel was something we heard a lot. So actually asking people whether the channel was fit for purpose was a big part of that, and could it deliver the growth that vendors certainly wanted to see from their channels. And so we came very quickly to the conclusion that we needed to have a framework into which people could assess themselves. So I just wanted to pause there, if I may, and launch our first poll. And it's a relatively simple question. It is around, if you were to assess your channel today, and I think we've got a huge cross-section of different types of company on the call today, where do you think you would be? Would you be kind of that foundational level where maybe you're early stage and you're building things out? Are you at the scaling and growing and the channel's moving along, we're recruiting new partners and things are happening in that stage? Are we at kind of the advanced level? Or are we looking beyond the current models for a totally new approach? So I'll just leave that up for a bit. I think we get about a minute and a half to encourage some answers on that. Okay, we'll just give that 20 seconds more to get any more votes in that people would like to make. And as you can see, the results are coming up in real time. And that's interesting that of the attendees we have today, I'm just going to stop that now, if that's okay. Well over half, 60% of you think you're at that foundational level. That's just changed again. I'm sorry, I'm speaking to it live. Sorry, we've ended up with 50% of foundational, 33% scaling and growing, and in the advanced kind of bucket, only 16% here today. So I think that gives me an indication that we might be talking about the right thing. So thank you very much for your participation on that, and then we'll crack on now. And I think we'd like to move into very much looking at the model and the framework that we have put together. So we've named this the Channel Transformation Framework. It exists as a kind of a downloadable document that in its first instance, but then is very much backed up by a surveying tool that generates a report for people who complete the survey. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to explain actually how we built out the framework, just to again give you some context for when we show you the tool, that we demonstrate that the two are linked together. So very much down the kind of left-hand side of this slide, we have 7 key areas that we have developed, and we think they align to people who want to transform their channels. First of those being plan, and as I said, we think these are the building blocks of any channel program. So we have planning, we have resourcing, which is how to resource your channel, the recruitment area, enablement, engaging. We have then growing channel, but also measurement. And then our question previously was a little staged, so forgive us that, but we wanted to understand or be able to put people into one of 3 buckets, which was foundational, scaling and growing, or advanced. And then we had this kind of catch-all area which we called beyond channel, which is where we started to hear sort of people who wanted to take a very different approach to the normal way of doing things. And so we had this kind of 7x3 approach that we mapped into the tool. The beyond channel bit sits outside it for now. We'll probably look to bring that in around 6 months' time. It takes a bit more development to do that, but certainly we're looking at this 7x3, right? And then, so what we've really done is we've built out key elements that we were hearing within the research that were saying, okay, if I'm at a foundational level, what do I need in the planning bucket? What do I need in resourcing and recruiting? And these might not apply to everybody. It's certainly not a definitive list. It was the most common areas that we were hearing, and certainly being able to assess your current channel programs for those foundational building blocks as a kind of check and balance, right? Have we got the absolute, bedrock of our channel strategy in place? We felt was important. And then as we move through and we build this kind of left to right, again, similar approach to scale and growth, but this is where we start to see competitive advantage within the channel start to be developed. And as you get more sophisticated in your journey to add more elements to your channel program or your strategy, it tends to move into that, right, we need to grow the channel, we need to scale it quickly, we've got that foundational level in place, and what can we now do to, accelerate things? And so that's the second element. And then the third is really around the advanced, which again we had kind of, I think 16% people in that initial poll saying they thought they're at advanced level. But this is when you start to get really clever with elements of your channel program, and it becomes sophisticated. It becomes persona-based, value-based, different geographies. Certainly, the need to refresh partners, develop marketplaces was all seen in this kind of area. And so what you're able to do with the tool is look at all of the 7 areas down the left-hand side and then assess yourself to see whether you have the attributes of advanced channels. Now, the one thing I would say is that you can have attributes that are in advanced without having foundational. This is not in any way linear. We see a lot of different initiatives, and I think when we talk to Ashleigh, who's been through this process of mapping her companies, particular where they are in the channel at the moment, then of course it becomes different for everybody, and so it generates an answer for you that gives and leads you to looking at areas of focus. Now, one thing we have done in building this is that we can we have weighted foundation, scale and growth and advanced, and we think that as you move from foundation through scale and into advanced, that there is a heavier weighting to some of the more sophisticated tactics that you want to see. We have had one question in quickly already, which is great, and that's, can we have a copy of the slides? And of course we will be sending these out afterwards for you to peruse at your leisure. So that's a little bit about how we have built things. And the thinking here was that we would, at best end up with, quite a nice image or a diagram or a PDF, and that it would sit there and people would have to pick it apart and really, it might wither on the vine. Let's be honest. A lot of content marketing is very hard, but we wanted to make something interactive that allowed people the ability to benchmark where they were, and that is the channel growth assessment tool. I'm going to jump into this in a minute, but really, and we're going to see it kind of live on screen. But really, what we're trying to do is give you a channel maturity score in a relatively short period of time. It allows you to rate yourself across industry averages in those 7 key areas we've talked about. It allows you to pinpoint the maturity of channel and those activities that you could prioritize. We certainly want it to help and assist in making investment decisions, whether you are investing in new partners or growing and enabling new ones, or you are getting more out of the advanced ones, or whether you need new channel. And so we also thought that this would be a good opportunity for channel marketeers, and I suppose marketeers in general, to take something that you had, kind of placed where you are on certain elements of the tool, and it would generate a report out that you could take to the business. And certainly we thought that was important as well. Okay, so without further ado, I wanted to kind of show you this live, so we kind of get away from the whole kind of PowerPoint slide, which we've been here to this point. And it's my very great pleasure to introduce Ashleigh Auld from Sonatype, who leads international channel marketing. And I'm just going to let Ashleigh introduce herself for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to show you how Ashleigh has completed her survey and what report it generates out for Ashleigh. And so, Ashleigh, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. So yeah, I actually had great fun this week filling out the tool. I've come from a channel background where I've worked both vendor and reseller side over the last 10 years, and how the landscape changed over that 10 years, where different areas of digital, direct, different B2B models where people are buying much more people from people. It's been really interesting seeing how the channel has changed. And I actually think this, although all of the areas from the myriad of channel marketing people do address on a daily basis, I've never actually seen something like this being put in place where you can just assess that whole channel piece. I think a lot of CMOs and high-level marketeers understand field marketing and ROI and how the whole marketing engine fits together. But then when it comes to channel marketing, I think we're expected to hit the same results when there's so many different areas that come into play. So at Sonatype, we're still working in quite a niche area of software and security. It's still quite an immature market, especially in parts of Europe where we are channel only. So my big focus is increasing end user market awareness, and it's absolutely vital that we are educating partners to really, really understand the product, understand the challenges in the market, and enabling them literally as much as possible. And they're nowhere near self-sufficient at the moment. So Sonatype had a direct model in place until about 2018, when we hired a channel manager. He has been with us for just over 2 years, and then I only joined a year ago. So this time last year, there was literally nothing, which was a great project to get my teeth into. We had no partner program, no MDF scheme, no strategic go-to-market strategy, no assessments or audits on how partners were, on the activity they were doing or the return. So in the space of a year, I've implemented a lot of those things, but we've still got a huge way to go before like the actual acquisition and proper executions in place. And I mean, obviously I'm doing it on my own at the moment. So this tool, when I did fill it out this week, it's actually been really good in how I can take it to stakeholders moving forward.
Yeah. Ashleigh, is it just worth letting our listeners know about kind of the progress of Sonatype, because you were funded and then I think you've just been acquired, and I think that gives a bit of colour to when we go through the survey.
Yeah, so when I originally joined, so Sonatype is a US-based company, so it's mainly been direct sales. As the international team has grown from, it was literally 2 people in marketing February last year. And then since then we've grown to a team of 8, including myself doing the channel and doing the channel on my own as well. We've just been bought by a private equity firm, Vista. So Vista owns 64 other software companies. They only invest in software. And the nice thing about being bought by a software-focused company is over the 64 companies they own, they measure best practices, they measure different tools and techniques they can put in place, they see what's working for some, what's not working, and then they try and roll that out over the group. Channel marketing is a huge thing that we'll be looking at over the next year.
Okay, that's really useful, so thank you very much for that. I'm just going to wait for my screen just to load up so that we can see the live assessment tool, which we will provide the URL for this towards the back end of the webinar. If you did want to get ahead of the game and start filling in it, I won't complain. So we tried to make the tool relatively easy to use, and we've kind of thought about the UX quite a bit here to make this something that, yes, makes you think about where you are on your channel journey, but also, is quite quick to go through. And I think if we just go through this, what I'm going to do is just show you the individual sections, and there's 7 of them, and we're just going to ask Ashleigh a very quick question on each one to see what her thinking was when she was completing this. And hopefully that will give you an idea of how the tool works. So you can see we've pre-populated Ashleigh's details here, and then it runs through in order the kind of 7 areas that we've mentioned before down that left-hand side of the framework. And we took a deliberate decision here not to highlight in this section whether it was a foundational item, whether it was a scaling and growing item or an advanced. And we wanted people to see them almost in a random fashion to say, oh yeah, I have got that, or no, I haven't got that. And spending a couple of minutes on each screen. We pre-filled this with Ashleigh's answers from earlier this week, just to save a bit of time on the webinar. So this is actual. This relates to Ashleigh's role and kind of situation at Sonatype. And so this is the first section, and you can see that we've got kind of 6 answers or elements that Ashleigh thinks are in place at Sonatype, and that for me that's really interesting. Early stage kind of vendor, just got funded, part of a much bigger group, and for me, Ashleigh, if I can ask, you seem to have certain elements in place, but what's missing and what might be next in the planning stage?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, a year ago, none of this existed. I think we literally just had partners signing a contract and an NDA coming on board, and then it was kind of try and help them as much as we could. In the last year, we've hired myself and 2 technical guys for resource as well. So between the channel manager, myself, and the techies, We've built out a distinguished partner program. That was the main factor I wanted in place, to set tiers so that we could use a program to drive the right behaviours, reward partners for those that are working in the right way and are actively promoting our brand. Business plan is obviously key to any success. The most successful partners we have are definitely the ones that we go and fully account map with. We actually come up with a proper marketing strategy. And obviously revenue is a big factor, and we're all here to make money at the end of the day. But when I came in and looked at the level of partners we have, they're all in very different, they fit in very different buckets as such, where some are consultants that will be going and talking to people in the industry and will just recommend us. Others were marketing resellers who don't have, resellers that don't have any marketing people internally, so it was trying to help them. So we put together the partner growth plans where necessary for those. Others were marketing teams that had a full resellers that had a full marketing team. So it was understanding how we use their tools in order to get out. And then the rest were your kind of fulfillment box shifters as such, where they just transact for us. So it's been a busy year just getting the foundations in place, and the business plans and the partner program. The cross-business channel alignment and analysis, I'm a complete analytics geek because I think that's the proof in the pudding of the work that I do with partners. And it's also the information that I need to take up to my boss and to CMO in order for them to actually see that there's a user case to leverage partners. So that's what I'd like to see more of, actually, the real looking at partner behaviours, putting together a proper competency plan, and doing the research into the back end of how they're operating.
Okay, good stuff. All right, thank you for that. I think if we move through to the resourcing part, and Ashleigh and I have discussed this, but because she's been in our beta group for the tool, and it was very interesting, this one to me, because it seemed that budgets were light, but you did have resource that was quite heavy. And I think you touched on that earlier, but was that a deliberate tactic, at your stage of growth, Ashleigh?
I think because we're a US business, we're a US enterprise, but in the US they don't need to rely on channel so much. Obviously, when it comes down to especially a European level or an APAC level, I mean, APAC are talking to so many different countries and partners that speak 20 to 30 different languages. We have the same, obviously, over countries kind of France, DAC, Italy, etc. So as our international brand has grown over the last year, the business really realised that they need to start spending money on the channel. And that's from, obviously, they've only got me from a resource perspective at the moment, but they only just gave us the budget for channel last year, which was interesting because I ran global channel at my last company and I had a budget about 10 times the amount and 3 members of staff reporting into me. So when I joined here, it was a real challenge on actually driving something from scratch and trying to grow that. So I said to my boss in my first week, I was like, it's fine, we can work with it. I'm going to spend it all in 3 months. You will see the pipeline, return on investment. I need to get creative with my campaigns and work extremely hard and organically with partners in order to leverage that. But we will see the results, and we did. So my budget doubled last year. We put together a proper MDF scheme in place, but it's not a typical MDF where they return based on their revenue. It's more on pipeline they generate from events, which is different because it's not the norm, especially in the vendor world. But resource-wise, I am completely up to my eyes at the moment, looking after 40 new partners. Again, less than I used to look after, but because it's a less mature model, you're working twice as hard with less budget. So that really, really, really needs to increase. We're actually looking to hire a partner marketing manager in the US later this year.
Okay, and I think that segues nicely into into the recruit section, because I think you just answered maybe the question that are you happy with the current channel? Are you recruiting? And I think maybe you just answered that. But it was interesting in the recruitment and so the tool is bearing this out, that there were only 2 boxes that you selected in this area, probably because you are happy with what you've got at the moment. Is that fair?
Yeah, so the partners that we do have, we've spent a year trying to enable the right people and the ones that have a business model that can help us grow and can obviously leverage them in their region. We do have a partner-based strategy at the moment, but we are still missing the kind of scalable piece at the moment. So we really need to have some consistency over what we're doing in EMEA and what we're doing in APAC. Driving that into America as well. But at the moment, we literally are ad hoc new partner onboarding, trying and testing their business models. We're in such a young stage that it's actually the fun side as well, though, because it's where you're at a stage where you're not so process driven that you can be agile with new partners still. Okay,
good stuff. All right. Well, thank you for that. And I think, as you said, as we move into the enable section of your kind of results, there's more there. And actually, it might be the time for me just to indicate what the industry average is at this point. I'm not sure whether we're going to get that as a question, but industry average is very much against the research group of 18 vendors, I think we had, that we've spoken to about this, and we benchmarked those before we started. That will grow over time as people complete the tool and the survey, and we speak to more people. But I think it gives you it's kind of a basic graphical representation of where we are. So again, I think you just alluded to it, Ashleigh, that you are, you've got certain foundational bits of the enablement model there, and you see it as a key activity at the moment.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, sure.
I think to be able to drive partners to be self-sufficient is obviously where all of us want to be, working in channel. But yeah, having the model in place and the resource and budget in place is obviously something different.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think the one that stuck out for me on this was the bottom left, which was around the need for a partner portal. I mean, you hear a lot about portals and that investment, and maybe at your stage you've gone a little bit way towards a portal, but not dived in with both feet. I think, is that fair?
Yes. So at my last company, we integrated Salesforce partner relationship management tool. It was a lifesaver, and for the partners that used it, it gave you so much transparency, ease of use, co-branded content. It just makes your life from an execution side so much easier, and also for senior people and people on the steering board looking at the channel, able to see like physical results, analytics, how partners are working, etc. Coming into Sonatype, we have actually just renewed our partner portal last month after a year. So it's still not quite where it needs to be. It's still very much a static portal that has our collateral in there, our logos in there, brand guidelines, some information on MDF and things. But it's nowhere near where it needs to be. But I think if your company has the budget and the resource to do it, because it's not cheap, definitely go for one.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. And an honest assessment of where you find yourself. And so just 3 to go in that kind of 7-step process, and in the engagement section of how you work, I suppose, day to day with clients and what you're saying to them and the communications. On this one, it seemed to me that you're doing a good amount of communication to partners. You've got stuff moving in that direction, but the one thing was maybe going to the next level of sophistication with that communication, maybe down persona lines or more technical sales, exec communities. Where are you on this on the engage side of things?
So we, as you know, everyone's busy, right? Everyone's doing a million things and running 100 miles an hour. So I think when you look at, and that's why I love how the channel works anyway, But I think every day is different, and everyone's traveling to different events and to different partner onboardings and sales sessions and obviously getting on with their own work. I think when you look at channel in black and white, you say, yeah, we're going to come up with this plan. We're going to have monthly cadence calls. We're going to have the VP on this one. Every time we do events, we're going to do a follow-up like 48 hours after. We're going to have hot desk days on the third Monday of every month. And then when you actually get to reality and you're trying to do that with 20 to 40 productive partners, that's just not feasible. So communications, the ones that we always guarantee we stick to from an external communication is we send out a weekly Monday morning email, which is just a quick catch-up, anything you need to know, sales, marketing, and tech. So I take all of the weekly reporting from like what blogs might be new, what new product releases have come out, what new campaigns you might be running. So they get that on a weekly email. We send a monthly newsletter and a quarterly webinar to our partners, but the webinar's recorded so that they can go back and watch it if they want to. And then generally the channel manager and the VPs of sales will have a monthly check-in to just go through leads, what opportunities are sat there and what the partner needs from us. Ad hoc-wise, the most work gets done when I'm sat instant messaging people, and probably shouldn't say this, but it's me messaging partners on WhatsApp, Slack, Skype, whatever, just day to day. I speak to the majority of our partners every day, if not at least twice a week. And that gets more done and more communications ongoing and like forefront of mind than anything actually in plan.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good advice, and that kind of whole instant messaging relationship with partners, I think, is quite forward thinking. So I think penultimate one is around, you've been acquired, you've joined this sort of amazing community of 64 other companies that are in the group and all being allowed to get on with things to a degree, but there's always going to be that background pressure of growth. And, growth was where we came in right at the beginning. It's the common denominator that we've got to get more out of the channel. Is it fit for purpose? So, and again, kind of 4 completed here. I think we've touched on that you haven't got dedicated MDF, but what's the thinking of the situation here, Ashleigh?
So I don't envy anyone working in channel and trying to report into their bosses at all. Again, having done it for a long time, you get used to and you just understand what works and what doesn't work. And you also understand that you need to try new things, and there's so many different factors that can affect growth, campaigns, different areas moving forward. One thing might work in one region, it doesn't work in another. One partner might have the best interest of launching an amazing campaign, and you might see nothing from it. So from the growth side, I've just from experience tried and tested lots of different things. One of the strongest things I found was working very closely with our field marketing team. So we're lucky at Sonatype where we've got a really strong marketing team. Raji runs the team, and she looks after UK and Ireland, Nordic, Benelux, and Great Western Europe. And then we've got our France, DAC, APAC guys, and then we're very lucky to have a campaigns manager who works on the back end, which again isn't a small outfit for just an international part of a US business. So I work very closely with them and find out what they're doing in their regions, and then I work out how I can utilize that with the partners, and I'll send tracking links to the partners. So if they get people to the events, every lead is measured. We work on Salesforce extremely intricately. We live and die by Salesforce, because at the end of the day, that's your results, and that's what gets you budget and keeps you going for the next year. So I have weekly check-ins with the sales guys. So we've built out Salesforce over the last year, so that any leads that we do give to partners, I get a weekly report showing what's been allocated to them. And then I check in every week with the sales guys, just saying, like, this opportunity, is there a partner associated to it? If there's leads sat there, then I'll tell the salespeople I'm giving it to a partner to take it to market. Again, it's never black and white trying to manage that.
No, absolutely. And I think it's interesting that you didn't highlight MDF program, but you are doing lead Passover. So a bit more, does that give you a bit more control of that demand gen part?
Yes, it does. So we do co-fund any events with partners, and obviously that then works with the partner. That partner owns that lead essentially, and I'm only measured on what the channel generates and what they turn over in revenue. So the lead gen side came because our sales organisation tend to have a couple of enterprise salespeople working the bigger deals, working their tier one accounts. And then we have our inside sales reps who manage all of the inbound all of the inbound leads, basically everything else that comes in that's not an enterprise account. And it's just too much for them. They can't keep on top of that. So especially in regions where language is required, we've got a process now in place where as soon as that comes in, the sales guy has a call with the partner, passes it over. If there's any issues, we have a call together. The partner then still registers that, and then that sits under them. I just manage to make sure where the opportunities are coming on alongside the channel manager.
And I think that's interesting that it's kind of people heavy at this stage of your development, which again probably de-risks things a bit for you in terms of that growth model because it aligns to your kind of stage of growth. Okay. And I think just moving through to the last piece of the survey tool before we kind of look at what the results and what you might get as an output. The measurement for me when we discussed this seemed to be that you had nailed kind of revenue, the kind of recruitment numbers, almost down to the full-time employees you had in the channel selling Sonatype. But where do you think you want to take the kind of measurement of your early stage channel?
Yes, it's not easy. It's a big model inside the sales and marketing engine. And revenue is one thing, but if you've got one partner that is just transacting for you because they're on a government framework, for example, or they might just know somebody in that enterprise and they can accelerate that sale really quickly for you. I'd rather be rewarding partners that, again, are actually proactively driving lead generation and are working closely with our sales team, and you have those relationships. I really liked filling this out because, again, there were things that I hadn't even thought of. So when you put on their lifetime partner value analysis, that's absolutely amazing in my eyes because we have our customer success team that always measure customer value analysis and they always measure customer retention and everything. But where I'd like to get the channel eventually is with a more sophisticated program in place, an actual MDF in place, but also the US and the international teams doing the same together, so that we're all driving the same processes in place from the Sonatype side. And I really like the idea of the quarterly scorecards. I used to do that in my last company, so every partner had a ranking, so that we could move that forward. But the main areas, acquisition, just making sure we have a proper process for who we're onboarding. We've already got the training and technical and sales training certification in place now. That only launched in August. Execution every day as usual, and making sure partners are doing what they say they're going to do. And then the retention would be good. Okay,
absolutely. And that's great. Thank you very much for kind of explaining the steps you went through and the situation you find yourself in. I think what was good to look at Ashleigh's example is there's a definite set of circumstances around stage of growth, where they are in terms of geographic expansion, the types of partners, the mix between resellers and consultants. So I think if we just move this on and kind of look at the outputs a bit without going into too much detail on anything Ashleigh might be taking back in-house, is very much to see you submit that and what we're trying to do here is drive out a kind of a cobweb visual representation of the situation you find yourselves in. And by the way, if you tick every box in every one of the 7 sections, this goes totally purple, which I'm not sure there's many people who would do that. But
if you tick everyone in those boxes, I want you as a mentor.
I think that's a big ask. But I think what we found with the Sonatype and Ashleigh situations, it gave a really kind of honest opinion of where Ashleigh finds herself, and I think we started talking around it just being able to take something back to the business and say, look, my priorities are this, we've done some benchmarking, and this is kind of what it looks like. So again, in terms of just moving slightly down this kind of live screen, you're going to get a brief explanation of the 7 areas of the tool looks at, and then recommended areas for focus. These are by no means hard and fast recommendations. They are things that given the weighting, what you've been through on the survey, and how you've used the tool, give kind of recommended areas of focus, and there are ones for each of the 7 areas, and then what we are building maybe for a second iteration of this is outputting that to a PDF, but we can certainly we will certainly be able to deliver these. And then it would be remiss of me not to say that right at the bottom of this, which is very unsalesy, I think, we've got booking a consultation if you want to discuss around these. But these are actually Ashleigh's results from her completing the survey within the tool this week. So Ashleigh, thank you very much for joining us. We'll bring you back for Q&A, which I think are not going to be long, but it's been very, very good. It's been great to have you here, and thank you for your kind of candid sort of feedback on where you are. All right.
No, thank you for having me. This has actually been really, really good for me to drive a further conversation with my boss later this week.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things we wanted to engender. So we had a kind of poll, which I think one more poll just to get through, which I think is really just a bit of feedback for us on whether you think we're going down the right direction. We heard from Ashleigh who's positive on that, but this was very much around the question really is, do you have a clearer idea from today's session that we've been presenting to you on how you might measure your channel and develop a clearer channel strategy? And I suppose this is me sort of asking the question, are you going to go and use the tool, or do you not think it's quite there yet? And we welcome that feedback. So we will leave that open for a minute or so, and then we'll come back and see if we can have a look at some of the results once I stop it. Okay, just about 15, 20 seconds to go. If anybody wants to put a final vote in before we move through to Q&A. Okay, so let's just stop the voting, and we will have a look at what we got. We've got some. So I think we've ended up at 80% saying yes, you might like to use this tool, and 20% saying maybe, and nobody saying you're barking up the wrong tree, Tom. So I will take that. Thank you very much for your input. But I do think, like all tools that we've developed a couple over the last 18 months, and it's very much we'll iterate over time, and we will look for improvements and how we can improve things. So I think that takes us to Q&A. And I'm going to start off, if I may, just answering ones that have been fired in the chat, because I think some of them are quite housekeeping. In terms of where can we get access to the tool, I am going to just put it in the Auld. I can send something. Display the announcement. And yes, there we go. So I've just put a link into the chat pane for you there. It will be on the slides as well, and hopefully that's helpful. I think we come back to. I think there's a couple of questions here for you, Ashleigh, if that's all right, because I think you gave some really great information. The first one is, which tool do you use sending out the Monday weekly emails for partners? And that's from Nina.
So I use just my Sonatype Gmail account, but I track it with Yesware. So I put in a template into Yesware. I've got my partner database list. Anytime we onboard a new partner, I add them to that. Purely then so I can see that they've read it. And the amount of times I say they didn't see it and I know they've opened it and read it is amazing.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. And then another one I think for you, Ashleigh, is how do you activate, again, those partners who haven't sold anything in the last year? I don't know if you've got any of those, but maybe back to your Starleaf days. I mean, there were certainly a few, weren't there? But you know, I suppose that's about partner reactivation, always.
I think it's always the 80-20 rule. I think you always get your 20-60-20. You get your 20% that absolutely thrive, drive amazing campaigns, go out and sell, are hungry to drive business and just get your brand and prioritize you. Then I think you get the 60% in the middle that when you've got the time and resource to drive them, they will do it, but you do have to push them. And then honestly, we have 20% that don't do much, or when you meet them, they talk the talk and they come up with great plans, and then you can't get an answer from them, then it's a day and something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, and I think re-engaging. Yeah, and I think re-engaging with partners is a bit of a hearts and minds exercise, and it's interesting. You've got a good number of people, maybe with limited budgets, but you can get into people's offices and re-energize them, and I think that's maybe a particular nuance of how you're set up. Okay, I think we're getting near the end, and thank you for sticking with us. Marianne, I don't know if there were any other questions that came in whilst we were on the actual model itself.
Yeah, thanks for that. I just want to say, actually, before I pose my question, a wealth of information and insight there. So thank you, Tom and Ashleigh. It was fantastic to see how this works firsthand, and thank you for being so open and honest about the context within your company. I think that really helped illustrate it. So a couple of things that I wanted to ask Tom is, you mentioned that you've got an industry average at the moment, and that might change obviously as more people fill in this survey. Are you going to be releasing that information? Because I'd love to find out how that moves forward in future.
Yeah, no, good question, and a good publisher's question, Marianne, as well, I think. So, which I like. I think what we need to do is we need to build some time with this out in the market. This launched at sort of 2:30 today. And so we wanted to get the people who signed up for the webinar first look at this. As we get more submissions and maybe we tweak the tool a bit, then the ultimate aim for this is to get to a kind of channel maturity maturity index for certain types of vendor, and that might be vertically specific, it might be geographic, but we think that's ultimately where the tool can go.
Wonderful. Okay. And from the insight that you have already, is there any difference between the maturities that you're seeing across different markets internationally?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think we do a lot of work in the US, and the majority is it's split between the US and EMEA. And I think what we're seeing, just from the initial kind of beta testing around this, is that channels develop in very different ways in different geographies. If you look at the US market, we have, early stage vendors normally start direct and they move into channel, and they have a whole different set of challenges than the more mature vendors in the US who've maybe got an established channel. I think in the UK and EMEA, we kind of run into channel really early on. We've got a really good 3-tier system here if you're part of that, or 2-tier. And so, again, different nuances. Common traits between them, of course, systems, processes. And our contention is that some of those systems and processes have been around for 20 to 30 years, and their operations, whilst have become more sophisticated, are basically the same underneath. But I think what we'll be able to pull out towards the back end of this year is some real regional differences that might allow vendors who operate in different markets to have different channel strategies for those markets.
Mm-hmm. Well, I certainly look forward to checking in with you in a few months' time once you've got more of that data. We can dig into that. Actually, as an aside, in our resources section of the webinar, there is a report that B2B Marketing have done with Sherpa, which gives you some background information on how to transform your channel marketing. So do have a look at that, and as we gain more data from Sherpa, we'll release that one too.
Absolutely. Okay, Marianne, thank you very much for those questions. I think really it's just for me to thank everybody for their time. I hope we've been able to get across today that this has been developing the framework and the tools has very much been around real life examples, what we've been talked about by a large number of vendors over kind of a year, nearly 2 years. We put the link to the tool in the announcement on the platform. It's also here. This is kind of shortened URL if you wanted to just take that out the slides. And then just before I say thank you and goodbye, two events that we are supporting this with currently, whether they will run in the current environment, we don't know, but they're very small events, not mass gatherings. One is that we have a breakfast on the 26th of March, which is our channel transformation group, and this is a peer-to-peer event with no slides. We have breakfast and we talk around a couple of topics that are led by vendors. We kind of host and make sure things finish on time. And on the 26th, we've got Avanade and Dell joining us to talk around some of the nuances around channel transformation. Week before, we also run something similar, but a kind of slightly smaller gathering where we try and match people together, and we use the clock tower at St Pancras, which we've done for a couple of years now. And if you wanted to access that and get an invite, we'd be delighted to see you. And finally, which Marianne mentioned, is the B2B guide that we were able to put together with B2B Marketing magazine, and we've had that out for about 3 months. But we put that into the market to support this whole channel transformation journey that we're promoting. So I hope that is just before 4 o'clock. I'd like to thank you, everybody who's attended, and everybody who's contributed in polls and surveys and the such like. We will follow up with some email around this. You've got the links if you want to get going. I'd really like to extend some more thanks to Ashleigh, of course, from Sonatype, who joined us and told us how she had used the tool. Ashleigh, thank you very much. And have a great afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for your attention. Bye-bye.
And thank you, Tom. Cheers. Bye-bye.